Harris was a regionalist architect whose idea of architecture didn't have anything to do with this international style or this streamline architecture. So the house had this aspect, this modern image, because John Intensa emphasized, the architect, that he didn't want to have a house very similar to the ones that he had previously created for other clients. And this is quite interesting because Harris was a regionalist architect who was that time very famous and who was part of the magazine staff and was very close to the director, the editor, Bill Johnson. And he was that time capturing all media attention. And John Intensa, who had been in Los Angeles because his father was working there, but also because he was interested in the industry of Hollywood, and he was actually working as a writer, because he wasn't an architect or an artist, he was a writer, a playwright. He wrote scripts for Hollywood movies. And when he became aware, he became aware of the interest that Harris Designs had for the media, he commissioned him for a house. And the only thing is that he didn't want to have a house that seemed very regionalist or traditional or even feminine, because most of the clients of Harris were female figures, artists, writers, very independent, rich or middle class, but very progressive women that have been Harris clients. And actually, one of the most interesting things is that when he actually designed his house, he asked expressively Harris to design a modern house. So he even took inspiration from these existing projects, like which are related to this house. A house that he explained in an article in the very magazine in California Arts and Architecture. This house was first published in California Arts and Architecture. It was the first appearance of John Intensa in his Future magazine. And in these articles, both in May 1937 and July 1938, he explained that it wasn't the house of a woman, it was the house of a man. And the house had to be masculine as a man, and had to be modern as a car, as a vehicle. The same, more or less, strategy that Le Corbusier was using in publicity, identifying houses with cars, with machines. And here, he was emphasizing the idea that it wasn't a house for a family, but it wasn't a house for a traditional family, but for a modern man, for a single man. And actually, the magazine explained that he was a bachelor, single, and he is interested in cars, in speed. He was presenting himself as the perfect bachelor when he actually was gay. But he was identifying the house had to be masculine. So he was using, even before he actually was the owner and the editor of the magazine, he was somehow creating his own public persona through the pages of the magazine. So it's not casualty. And in the second publication of the second house, in July 1950, when he published his own house, he described himself as a very sophisticated man. Well, in the first house he was in his 30s, in the second house he was it was built 10 years later, he was in his 40s, and he presented himself as a very educated, sophisticated, gourmet, very classy man who was into modern design, modern furniture. So he created his own public persona that is coming to in the magazine, which is also interesting of how the magazine is used to create narrative fictions of not only projects but also the people who lives or who desires these projects. Because I will tell you later, and it can be part of the discussion, the magazine focused mostly in the 50s in creating desirability by the projects that the magazine published. So focused on another completely different aspect. So change turned its focus from social housing, public responsibility, politics, to design, advertising, marketing, and the creating of respectability and desirability by means of design and architecture. For instance, this picture. So instead of creating, because this is an example of the only case study house project that was intended as a mass reproduced, fabricated project that could be reproduced, that could be used as a sort of unit for an entire development, except for this house or this project designed by Quincy Jones that was intended as a sort of pilot house. The rest of the houses were designed specifically for a client, for people that were upper middle classes, white people, mostly Jewish people from the west side of Los Angeles, sophisticated people, for instance, such as Conrad Puff, designer, architect, very educated, talented designer who had this house. And then here, already in the 50s and 60s, the work, the role of architectural photographers such as Julius Schulman is crucial, because he actually made the most of architectural photography to create imaginaries, to create visions of sophistication, of glamour, of people that are lounging in the garden or emerging from the pool after a night swim in the pool. Something that not everyone could afford. But actually the houses were intended as middle classes, affordable houses, but over the years the houses became more and more sophisticated and more intended for a specific client, because the magazine wasn't interested at the end of was interested in these social projects, but in creating these links between the market and designer market. For instance, except for this project, the Mutual Housing Association, which was cooperative housing, and that was very interesting, and was developed between 1935 and 1950, and the magazine paid attention to this project. Except this project, the rest of the projects that were published were mostly single-family houses. So there were many reasons. For instance, during that years, the Red Scare, the political prosecution of people that were suspected, that were considered communist or socialist, actually made the magazine focus more on single-family houses, the construction actually of the American identity, post-war American identity, rather than focus on community projects like this one. Actually, that was a very problematic project because it was a socially integrated project, something that was prohibited at the time in Los Angeles or in America. I mean, you couldn't create a developed neighborhood that were mixed in terms of social or racial integration. So economic stature, race were absolutely fixed notions. So this one was challenging, except for this case, the rest of the magazine focused on single-family houses. Well, as I mentioned before, some inspiration for the magazine Case Study House program. First of all, the own magazine first early social housing program, the West, the small houses of the West, or the small houses. Marx Daniel, the second editor, had developed, or for instance, the California Homes Plan Book, or some other companies or some other publication that were creating these dossiers of houses, plans that were very, very popular at that time. Not only for traditional or eclectic or revival houses, but also for modern houses. For instance, the very year that he built his house, Richard Neutra was publishing here his FDL house as a sort of a model house that was published in his California home. So it was something that was very popular, and he transformed into his own case study house program that was later focused more on publicity and advertising. So how are we working or developing our research, for instance, on the magazine? We're focusing on the things that have been written, that have been said, discussed. For instance, that the magazine always collaborated with specific manufacturers or retailers or companies that were supplying the material, for instance, for free or supporting the houses, as Esther McCoy said. So what we've been doing is to study all the companies that were announced, that were publishing, that were promoting their products, and see what we find. And for instance, we are doing lists of every single project, the content of the magazine, how many ads, how many architectural content, art content, etc. the magazine has. For instance, because Esther McCoy said in different articles that the magazine was a very thin magazine with no, with barely publicity or advertising, which is false, because the magazine, at least 0.5% of the magazine were ads. So I don't know how Esther McCoy said in 1962 the magazine didn't have any advertising, because the magazine was full of advertising. And actually it was one of the most interesting things of the magazine. So we are also studying one by one all these case study houses and seeing which manufacturers or companies were announcing their products associated with the case study house. Because this is a very intelligent decision of John Intensa when he proposed the very first project early in 1945, when it was almost impossible to build because of the lack of materials, or the shortage of material because of the war. Actually, in order to create a vision, a real, realistic vision of the project, he created designs, and the designs were illustrated with products, with pictures of the project that were composed as part, in photomontage, as part of the future image of the house, because all these projects will be part of the image of the house. So this link between objects, products, market, and future design was part of the success of the magazine. So we've been studying all the companies that were announcing their project in different issues, because a case study house could be published in 3-4 different issues of the magazine, and we realized that some case study houses are announced through different companies or different manufacturers. For instance, that some gas company or roof companies claim that they have actually built the roof or the services of the house, which is impossible, because the house could only be built by one roof company or rock company. But different magazines, different issues of the magazine announce different companies that claim that their products were in this case study house, which is obviously a market strategy. And we are doing this with all these case study houses, and see, for instance, installation to different companies or casting to different companies that were in different issues announcing the same case study house. So this is part of our methodology of work with the magazine. For instance, we are, with all this information, we are creating statistics. For instance, in green you have the number of ads. We have divided the magazine into 3 different periods. The pre-Intensa years, beginning in 1935, because it's the first issue in which the magazine became modern. So from 1935 to 1940, the pre-Intensa years,